Right now, somewhere in Melbourne, a Tesla is doing a hook turn, hands off the wheel, using full self-driving. That's not a US-only party trick anymore. It's been happening in a right-hand drive country, on roads that look a lot like ours, for almost a year. So here's the question that should be bugging every UK owner. If FSD already works on RHD roads, what's actually stopping it here? I've dug through the rollout data in Australia, New Zealand, and every other right-hand drive market chasing this tech, and the answer isn't what most people assume. Stick with me, because by the end of this you'll understand exactly why a country that drives on our side of the road can already use this, and we still can't. Let's start with what's real, not rumoured. FSD Supervised first went public in Australia in September 2025, with trials in Melbourne and Sydney. And Melbourne mattered specifically because it was the first time Tesla had ever demonstrated FSD handling a unique piece of local road law in a right-hand drive market, Melbourne's hook turn, where you turn right from the left-hand lane to keep tram tracks clear. If FSD could handle that, RHD driving clearly wasn't going to be the blocker people assumed. Fast forward to June 2026 and Tesla pushed FSD Supervised version 14.3.3 to Australia and New Zealand, a serious update. Tesla says it's around 20% faster in how it handles local roads, with smoother roundabouts, less unnecessary lane drift, and better judgment on when to slow for changing traffic lights. There are also cabin camera improvements, including better eye tracking for drivers wearing sunglasses, genuinely useful in Australian summer and just as useful here. Right now that update is limited to hardware for cars, the refreshed Model 3 Highland and the newer Model Y variants, with a lighter version for hardware 3 cars following separately. It's running as a monthly subscription, $149 Australian dollars a month in Australia, 159 New Zealand dollars in New Zealand. Worth noting, Tesla pulled the one-time lifetime purchase option in Australia around this rollout, pushing new customers to subscription only. Likely the same model the UK launches under whenever it arrives. And New Zealand's transport agency has been fielding official information requests about the rollout, which tells you it's not some grey market hack. This is a full commercial product, priced, marketed and rolled out at scale in a market that drives a lot like ours. Same side of the road, a similar mix of motorways, roundabouts and tight suburban streets. For years, the working theory, including from me on this channel, was that right-hand drive markets would simply be slower because Tesla had to re-engineer camera positioning, steering geometry, and decision-making for a mirrored road layout. That theory is now hard to defend. Australia and New Zealand have been running FSD in real RHD traffic, hook turns, roundabouts, narrow suburban streets, for close to a year, with a second major version already shipped. So why did Australia move first? Tesla's own head of Australia has said plainly that there are, in his words, no regulatory obstacles in Australia as we have in North America. Australia doesn't run a dedicated type approval regime for driver assist software the way Europe and the UK do. FSD Supervised operates under the existing rule that a licensed driver stays responsible and ready to take over, the same basic framework that already covers autopilot. No bespoke sign-off process to sit through, no separate agency that has to independently bless the software before it can go live. That's the real reason Australia was fast, not the side of the road, and not some quiet re-engineering breakthrough that happened to coincide with an Australian launch. That flips the whole conversation. This was never really about whether Tesla could build FSD for right-hand drive cars. Melbourne answered that months ago. The actual question now is which government signs the paperwork first and how long their process takes. That's a completely different problem. If RHD driving isn't the problem, the UK's hold-up comes down to one thing. the shape of our regulatory system, not our roads. In April 2026, the Dutch regulator, the RDW, granted FSD Supervised its first type approval in Europe under UN Regulation 171. That's a formal, government-issued sign-off, not a beta test. It opened the door to some EU countries. Here's the part that matters for us. The UK left the EU's regulatory structure after Brexit, so there's no automatic mutual recognition of that Dutch approval. The VCA, our Vehicle Certification Agency, would have to run its own independent assessment using GB-specific rules, even though a G7 regulator has already done comparable work. Independent trackers describe FSD Supervised's UK status as under review. But let's be precise, because this is the bit people get wrong in the comments. That's not an official phrase published by the VCA or Tesla. It's shorthand for not approved, no confirmed movement. And as of the most recent public information, there's no confirmed evidence Tesla has even formally filed a UK application yet. Nobody outside Tesla and the VCA actually knows for certain. Based on how long VCA assessments typically take after an RDW-style approval elsewhere, generally 4 to 10 months, late 2026 to early 2027 remains a reasonable working estimate, but that clock arguably hasn't even started. One detail undercuts a comment I see constantly. Well, Europe's approved it, so it must work on our roads too. The Netherlands drives on the right-hand side. RDW's approval covers a left-hand drive Tesla operating in right-hand traffic. It says precisely nothing about a right-hand drive car navigating left-hand traffic, the exact combination the UK needs proven. That real-world validation comes from Australia and New Zealand, not Europe, which means the UK isn't actually missing a technical proof point. That box got ticked in Melbourne months ago. What's missing is purely institutional, an independent VCA sign-off built from scratch, because Brexit switched off the shortcut. Quick, separate but related note, because it's easy to mix these two up. The DFT does have a live public consultation open right now on safety principles for fully autonomous, self-driving vehicles under the Automated Vehicles Act 2024, closing the 9th of September 2026. That's a different, later track. It governs robo-taxis and unsupervised FSD, not the supervised version we're talking about today. But it's worth watching because it's the clearest sign yet that the UK's wider self-driving framework is actually moving. And here's the comparison that really makes the point. Ireland is right-hand drive too, just like us and just like Australia and New Zealand. But Ireland is still in the EU. Their government signed a legal framework for Level 2 plus automated driving back in March 2026. And because Ireland can eventually inherit that RDW type approval rather than build its own from scratch, Ireland may well get FSD supervised running before we do, despite matching us exactly on which side of the car the steering wheel's on. Same driving side, different institutional starting point. That's the whole story in one sentence. The UK isn't alone in the slow lane. Japan, right-hand drive, and one of the few other places on Earth that shares our exact combination of right-hand drive cars and left-hand traffic, has had Tesla testing FSD since August 2025, expanded from a single Model 3 to include the Model Y by early 2026. Japan's Transport Ministry, the MLIT, is running its own review, citing narrow urban streets and unique road signage as areas it wants to see handled properly. Even Tesla's own optimistic case only points to sometime in 2026, with some independent estimates pushing into 2027. So Japan, despite being an advanced safety-conscious market, is tracking almost exactly alongside the UK, not ahead of it. Hong Kong tells a similar story. It's right-hand drive too, a legacy of British rule that stuck the same way it did here, and its transport department is still reviewing FSD Supervised with no formal green light yet. Tesla's actually ending the one-time purchase option there at the end of June 2026, switching to subscription only in anticipation of eventual approval, and it's been quietly building a Hong Kong-specific training dataset from its local fleet, preparing for the day the paperwork clears. Line them all up and the pattern is obvious. Every market that requires a formal government body to independently sign off before deployment, the UK, Ireland, Japan, Hong Kong, is moving slowly, regardless of which continent it's on or which side of the road it drives on. Every market that doesn't require that, Australia, largely New Zealand, is already live. That's not a coincidence, and it's not about engineering. So does the Australia and New Zealand rollout speed up our timeline? Not legally. The VCA still has to run its own assessment regardless of what's live elsewhere, but it matters in a quieter way. Every roundabout, every narrow lane, every hook turn edge case that FSD handles correctly in Melbourne or Auckland feeds back into Tesla's global training data. That's real-world right-hand drive, left-hand traffic evidence backing up whatever technical package Tesla eventually hands the VCA. It de-risks the submission and gives Tesla a stronger, more mature product to bring to the table, even if it can't shortcut the paperwork itself. Practically, nothing changes for you today. There's nothing to prepare, no action to take. FSD Supervised will land as an over-the-air update once the VCA signs off, and if you've already paid for FSD capability, that carries forward. You won't lose it or need to pay again. Late 2026 to early 2027 is still the number to have in your head, not a guarantee. And if you want to track this yourself rather than waiting for my next update, the live mileage and status tracker is always up at fsdjourney.uk. So to sum it up, right-hand drive was never really the problem. Australia and New Zealand have proven that. The problem is which regulatory lane each country is sitting in, and post-Brexit, ours is the slow one. If you want the full breakdown of exactly what the VCA still needs to do, I covered that in detail in my last video. Links on screen now. Subscribe if you want the next update the moment it lands, and tell me in the comments, which right-hand drive market do you think gets FSD next? Ireland, Japan, Hong Kong, or does the UK still leapfrog all of them? I read every comment. See you in the next one.